Hello everyone, so today we are going to do a little bit of a hands-on activity. So this week's theme is going to be sculpture, and we talked about different types of sculpture last lecture, but in this lecture, in this activity, we are going to play around with assembling different sculptures. So we talked about this Mark de Zuvro's work, how he used this steel I-beam to construct his visual language. We also talked about David Smith, who was the first American to create a welded sculpture. So here he found this steel plates and found objects and then he pieced them together, assembled them together to create work of art. And same goes for, oh no, slide. Can I do that? Hold on.
Concern.
And we also talked about this is also David Smith's work. And another example of assemblage work would be this Anthony Carroll's work as well. So what we are going to do is we're going to create an abstract sculpture using foam core board, which you can get for like less than $1. I mean, with the tax, it was like $1.27 or something like that. And we're gonna create a assembled sculpture. So some of the student example that I have is something like this, where she used all this foam core to create this final work. Well, this is actually made out of wood, and she just used the foam core to create models, like a different iteration, just to kind of get a sense of what she wants to do with the final material, which was a sheet of plywood. And she was able to create something really cool like this. And also there's another student work example. Notice how many iterations they made. I'm not going to ask you to make this many. I'm just going to ask you to make just one. But look at all this different type of geometric composition that he's creating to final, and then he was able to finalize all these things that he learned from all this and then into this work of art. He was able to create something this cool like this. And another good example of how she was able to create this kind of a form and then translate it into her work like that. So I think this was a really cool sculpture. It's very abstract, simple but yet complex. So you're assembling simple elements to create something really complex. I like the paint. I very much enjoyed the paint jobs and everything. And I think she wanted to create some kind of a bee theme, so she wanted to do like this triangle shapes and then this kind of organic shape. Her project broke off, on a presentation day, but I think she did a fantastic job. So this is pretty much what we are going to do. I mean, obviously we're not going to be able to make it out of plywood sheets, but we are going to create a sculpture using foam core board. So give me 1 second. Alright, so material that you need for this project is foam core board, preferably 3/16, something not too thick, but thick enough to hold a shape, and something to just cut behind. You don't want to make all the knife marks on your desk. And a knife, so you can use X-Acto knife or box cutter, anything that you want. Alright, so with this project, what I want you to do is think about how you are going to abstract on shape. So whenever I assign like a artwork, a lot of people try to make a representation of something. So that means that someone wants to make something that looks like something. So one of the students that I wanted to create like a frog or bicycle and things like that. I mean, I'm not against that or anything like that, but I want you to think about how you can create an abstraction of bicycle or bike or whatever that you want to represent. So it doesn't have to exactly look like a exact replica of a foam core version of bicycle. You can think about how you can make it look like bicycle. You can make it you can have all the indication of the bicycle, but somehow it looks different. It looks I don't want to say weird, but abstracted, so that it really sparks the curiosity of your audience. So we can think about the bicycles. So let me just show you an example. So bicycle, well, has two wheels like this and have something connected to that. And I don't know how bicycle looks like these days, but something like this. And then it's got wheels. So when we take a look at bicycles, we have two wheels and something to connect it with. But you can also you can kind of start dividing one at a time to start abstracting your composition. So for instance, two wheels is such an iconic thing for a bicycle. You can have something bigger circle like this and smaller circle somewhere here. Then a connection of two is important, so we'd have something like that, and a seat, but I'm gonna do the seat like this, and a handle. So here it doesn't I'm not sure this is working, but it doesn't quite look like a bicycle, but it is. We kind of still get the essence of the bicycle, which is two wheels connected and then kind of things on top of it. So you can really give it a higher degree of abstraction as well. So here I could create a bicycle, big wheels, small wheel, circular object, indication of connection, and a seat, and handle. So here I was able to, so take a look at this part. So this is, it doesn't look like bicycle, but still it is an abstraction of a bicycle. We still have two wheels, something to connect, and different elements to kind of indicate that this is an abstracted representation of a bicycle. So this is what I want you to do with this sculpture. Another thing that you need to really focus on is how you are going to create form. So we are still dealing with a flat object, which is foam core board right here, but we're gonna think about how we can create a form using flat sheet foam core here. So let's get right in. So I'm gonna cut this foam core into smaller pieces because definitely my desk is not big enough. So I'm gonna come on, get rid of that stuff. It is always recommended to use a ruler when you do the cutting, because it's always cleaner that way. I cut something like this big. I'll overshot the landing, but it should be fine. Alright, and then I'll finish up the cut. Something like this. Come on. Alright. That. Alright, so now I have a nice piece of strip that I work with. So for this project, I don't want to say project. For this activity, I want you to think about how you can simplify your form, something that, or you don't have to create an abstracted representation of something. You can do totally pure abstract work of art, geometric kind of thing. So that's what I'm going to do actually. So I'm going to start with a simple shape that is rather simple. So for instance, I'm gonna start with a square. More like squares, because I'm cutting multiple. Oh, display this super sharp. So now I have two flat pieces of squares. But how can we make form out of this? So first instinct will be creating a box, right? Something like this, and continue. Or another thing is think about how you joining these three sides to create this kind of a half box, half cube. So all of a sudden we have this form. But edge face to edge connection with this really thin material doesn't really work very well. So I want you to explore this technique of woodworking called slot joining. So slot joining is when you make a slot and then join them together, and then without use of any adhesive, it'll by joining those two slots, the strength of the material will hold them together. So how can we make a slot? So first thing first, I want you to draw first, and I'm gonna put one of the piece like this, and then I'm gonna trace the thickness of this material just like that. And now I have a cutout like this. But when you're working with this, I want you to cut a little bit smaller. I want the slot has to be just tiny little bit smaller than what you just draw, because I want that in a firm connection of two different elements. So using the X-Acto knife to connect those two, and then I'm just gonna break that off. I'm gonna flip it. I'm just gonna inspect places where it didn't cut all the way, and finish that up, and then I'm gonna cut that out. So now I have a slot. So next thing you can do is you can literally just join them together like that, and all of a sudden you have this kind of a three-dimensionality to your form. But notice how this is flimsy right now. So another thing that you can do is you can reinforce your slot by creating on the slot on the both side of the both material. So something like this. And I think I made the slot a little bit too wide, so this time I'm gonna make it even narrower. Cut that out. Come on. That might be a little too thin, but let's see. Okay, that'll work. So if I join these two slots together, I can create a really strong slot joinery where now this is not going anywhere. See how strong that is? Alright, so this is how slot joining works. So I want you to explore this joining method to create some kind of form. So here, another thing that I can try is add, maybe I'll join this right in here. So let's just do it. So I'm gonna create a slot that is about big. That may be a little bit too deep. I'm gonna cut that out so that you're cutting much narrower than what you drew there for a stronger bond. Finish that up, break that off, and let's see. So I'm gonna join these two together like this, and I'm gonna stand it like this, and here I can add another one, something like this. So I feel like I can just push this in and it'll stay together because the friction is very strong. So voila, so all of a sudden I have this three-dimensional form now. So right now it's kind of awfully boring. So what I want you to do is I want you to explore making it a little bit more complex. So one thing that I can think of is opening up the shape a little bit. So I'm gonna create somewhat like a window look to it. So for instance, I can create something like, I can open up this shape right here. This out by cutting this section out. Like that. So I'm gonna use the blade to cut this out. Alright, so now I have this cut piece right here, and then I'm gonna open this up as well. Alright, so now I have two open pieces, and then I'm gonna slot join them together and see what it does. That's kind of cool right there, see? And good thing about, opening up, because you can also use these leftover pieces as well. So I'm gonna open this up as well. Alright, so I have three open shapes like this. And this one I'm gonna connect it in here and see what happens. So right now I'm not necessarily making my sculpture to look like anything, because I am working on what we learned, abstract sculpture, meaning that it doesn't have any reference to anything that is in real life. So it doesn't look like a horse, it doesn't look like a landscape, it's just pure geometric forms. So I was able to create this kind of a really maze looking shape like this, and which I'm liking it actually. So I'm gonna keep on adding stuff. Alright, so as you can see, just by adding more and more and more, you can start to create much more complex shape like this. And also notice the well, actually I'm gonna make a quick slot right there because it's bugging me a little bit. Alright, so now it's much more stable. So just by adding more and more, you can start to create this really complex maze looking sculpture. And also you can introduce all these forms. So I'm gonna switch to the 3D view. So as you can see here, we were able to, by adding simple and flat sheets of what's it called, foam core, we were able to create this form, which is volumetric and is sculpture in round, meaning that each angle that we look at is different. So this is something, so you don't have to make it work exactly looking like this, but I want you to explore how you can create an abstract sculpture by using something flat like this, taking on something simple, and then adding up to create something more complex. And yeah, so I don't want you to make a sculpture that looks like a Pokemon, no, that's not that is not what I'm looking for. If you really want to do a Pokemon, at least do a really abstraction of Pokemon, so something that'll look like a Pikachu but not exactly like a Pikachu, so it makes the audience be more curious about your work. So that is it for this week's assignment. So this is going to be due by next Wednesday. And also I want to remind you guys that your final exam assignment, which is creating one piece of artwork of your choice, is due on next Thursday, which is the last day of the class. So I won't be able to accept any late work on that because that is the last day of the class, and and on that night I have to submit the grade. So So make sure to plan ahead and give yourself a good amount of time, because making art takes time. As you can see, just to create this one, it took about like an hour. And also, I'm very experienced working like this. You know, I've been creating work, this kind of a work for almost 10 years now, so I can just create something like this in an hour. But for someone who's just trying out this kind of thing, it'll take a lot of time. So make sure to set yourself a good amount of time to work on your final work example. And if you have any questions, reach out to me as soon as possible. If you see any errors in grade, just let me know. All right, I'll see you guys on next week's lecture. This is a nice looking sculpture, by the way, right?